Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson, and the Cheltenham Festival for 2021 has been run and won. We certainly had many outstanding performances on the track. I'm going to dissect them on today's program, as well as start looking ahead to the next Big Jumps feature. And that, of course, is probably the biggest of all, the Grand National. Joining me once again is Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley. Guys, great to catch up. Stephen, I'll start with you. So many highlights on the track at Cheltenham this year. What was the standout from your perspective?
I think probably Honeysuckle winning the champion hurdle was the most devastating hurdling performance. I think Allard destroying the field was the most impressive chasing performance. The Gold Cup was an absolutely brilliant race. Really enjoyed that despite being on the second. There were some disappointments along the way. Obviously, Envoy Allen fallen early on was a real sort of blow. That left a real substandard race afterwards. But hopefully he's back on track and we should see him out again soon. Possibly at Aintree, possibly at Punchestown. So we've got lots to look forward to, Shane. That's the great thing about racing. However well you did yesterday, there's always tomorrow with more stuff to come.
I hope spring's eternal, Stephen. I certainly believe in that. Ed, good to see you again. What was your standout performance at Cheltenham?
Absolutely. Good to see you too. I think from a chasing perspective, Allaho winning the Ryanair was scintillating. Rachael Blackmore went off in front with Min and they pretty much didn't see which way he went. I'll come on to that race in a bit more detail later. I think there's a few eye catchers in behind, but from a herding perspective, actually, I thought Bob Ollinger was really impressive. I mean, beforehand, of course, it was billed as like the big three, wasn't it? With Brave Man's Game and Galliard de Menil, and Bob Ollinger tanked round, and then the way quickened up. Harry Cobden, who was on Brave Man's Game in defeat, has gone on record to say he's never been in a hurdle race where a horse has quickened away with him in the manner which Bob Ollinger did. And of course, the world looks his oyster quite very quickly. Henry de Bromhead's interview recently where saying where they next season could go 2 miles, 2.5, 3 miles, fences or hurdles. So I think that's kind of narrowed it down as far as his plans for next season. But yeah, Bob Ollinger looks to he's got the ability to go right to the top of the tree.
All right, we'll talk more about that shortly because there's a lot to digest from the 2021 Cheltenham Festival. But let's get into some latest news. First point, guys, that I want to touch on is that Easy's Land, who of course chased home the champion Tiger Roll Stephen in the Grand Annual, he's not going to go to the Grand National. Do you think they're making the right decision with that?
I think that's a bit of a shame, actually, because obviously, that cross-country race, which would be on my gravestone in years to come, that was an absolute financial disaster because, the only rally was I laid Tiger Roll a place rather than the win part. It was slightly cheaper, but nonetheless very painful. That was a staggering performance, really, by Tiger Roll. It was literally winding back the clock 4 years as though nothing had gone in between. His last 2 runs this winter were diabolical, but he was a different horse. Easy Island, I think, would have been a really interesting runner in the Grand National. I would imagine the trip would have been no problem, and he had a very high-class horse. He obviously would have had to improve himself round Aintree, but he does look like the sort of adaptable, fluent jumper that would have done well. So yeah, that's a real shame that he's missing.
I suppose in one way, Ed, he's still a fairly young horse by national hunt standards. There might be opportunities for him to go in that direction in years to come.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you look at Grand National winners, they go on longer than the mother-in-law on a wet weekend, don't they? They can be running in 13, 14-year-olds. You've got the cross-country circuit seems to be dominated by horses approaching their teens these days. So, he has been scratched. Again, we touched upon it at the time, but his CV would suggest he's quite ground dependent. All his best form has come on very deep ground, and I believe Connection say he felt he got taken out of his comfort zone a little bit on drying ground at Cheltenham last week. So maybe that's in the back of their minds that if Aintree rocked up with some decent ground, it wouldn't be for him. But yeah, as you say, he's entitled to come again, and Tiger Roll can't go on forever, despite myself and Stephen keep waiting for him to disappear out the back of the television at a Cheltenham Festival. But Easy's Land by hook or crook and default will probably come back at the cross country next year and be pretty much favourite or thereabouts again.
You guys, we just need to touch on a bit of sad news that's come through over the past couple of days, and that's Sheikh Hamdan Al Maktoum, one of the biggest owners and breeders in world racing over the past 40 years, has sadly passed away. He's going to leave a significant legacy, Stephen. He's had many great horses, particularly when it comes to flat racing, and he won many features all around the world. But I suppose it's another challenge that the industry's got when we see such prolific owners and breeders sadly move on, pass on. We certainly need more people to be coming through with those same ambitions and same desires.
Yeah, it is a very sad day. Nashwan was my favourite horse on the flat for many years. I think there is a big problem coming for flat racing. All of the big owners, and again, like the jumps, it's a small monopoly of people, are, to put it politely, knocking on a bit. And there's no obvious sort of younger people coming through. There's a lot of yards in Newmarket in particular whose whole string, hundreds of horses, are dominated by one person or two people maybe in the whole yard. If you start losing people, the industry is going to be an awful lot of pressure suddenly, and prices that are grossly inflated for some of these top horses might start coming down. It's not good news at all. I think there's a lot to be concerned about jump-wise at the moment with the monopolisation of ownership, but it's no less true on the flat.
Ed, we heard from Stephen Nashwan being his favourite horse owned by Sheikh Hamdan. Mine was Jeune, who won a Melbourne Cup back in Australia. What about you? Did you have a favourite?
Well, I could be controversial here. Yeah, I'd have to say Isterbrak, because he he didn't make it on the flat, did he? And it was the fact he didn't. It obviously went off to Aidan O'Brien, and it was arguably the best champion hurdler we've ever seen once he went over hurdles. But yeah, as you say, it's the test of time, isn't it? We've seen recently Batash has been kind of flying the flag for those silks, and I remember Tagruda as well. It's probably quite an underrated mare. Going back 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, she walked the Oaks in a common canter and was really, really good. Yeah, it's as Stephen says, a few owners sadly have passed away, and obviously with Prince Khalid Abdullah as well. And then when you look at the jumps kind of field as well, haven't we? We've had David Thompson from Cheveley Park. He's obviously put it into his son's name for now, but they said they're not particularly looking to expand their output. Gigginstown House Stud have announced, in the next couple of years they're looking to walk away. So will be big questions when these huge multi-million-pound owners who plough big money into, we've got 80, 90 horses in training, in not an exaggeration, in some parts. What happens when they do walk away? And will prices drop? How will it scatter? Who will come in? Will there be anyone to come in and replace them? As I think the next 5 to 10 years, like most things in life, but in terms of the raw economics of the funding and infrastructure into racing from owners is a lot of uncertainty, shall we say.
Yeah, I think you make some very good points there. All right, guys, let's take a look back now on the 2021 Cheltenham Festival. And so many highlights throughout the week. We'll start with the Irish dominance, Stephen. They pretty much won everything. We expected there to be an influx of the Irish just winning most of the features. But now that we've had a few days to sort of reflect on it, do you think they can be stopped? Will the English be able to fight back any time soon? Or is the game almost impossible for that to happen at the moment?
Well, I don't think they will fight back. I mean, it was 23-5, wasn't it? I mean, that was shocking. Even for those of us who thought there was a stone or two between England and Ireland, it was still pretty amazing that happened. The UK racing is in a bad state. There's far too much of it. The prize money is diabolical, and it's generally speaking low level over jumps as well. I mean, we've just had a week now, Shane. I bet a lot on low grade jumps racing. It's what I like and enjoy personally. But we've had 3 jumps meetings Monday to Friday this week. That is absolutely ridiculous. They all clash. There's nobody there at the minute anyway, so it's only for the off-course firms. There should be a maximum of 2 jumps meetings a day, Monday to Friday. Saturday 3, whatever, that's not a problem. It's a busy day of people going racing in normal times. There needs to be minimum prize money for the graded races in particular. I think we need to almost have minimum field sizes or the race gets scrapped. Prize money's got to go up, and probably the ratings of the UK horses has got to go down a stone immediately overnight. I mean, this is my absolute rant of the week, but there's a horse of Dan Skelton's, a very, very nice progressive horse who's just gone into handicaps called Wild About Oscar. He won a Utoxeter handicap last weekend, well backed, narrowly, with very little to spare. He's rated now the same as Bob Ollinger was before Cheltenham. I mean, it's complete madness. These horses are at least a stone too high. They get whacked up for winning summer races a lot of the time, or they get whacked by winning by wide margins on soft ground in uncompetitive small fields, and they're grossly inflated and they can't compete. So that's my checklist of moaning about British racing, but there's going to have to be a massive change for anything to change. Otherwise, Ireland will continue to completely dominate. They've got the best horses, the best owners, the best trainers, and the best jockeys. And the other thing, sorry about this, I used up the whole of our time, but Paul Nicholls, who's a genius, had not had a blank festival for 19 years. That is an incredible stat. And most depressingly of all, he hasn't got any good young horses. They were all lapped at the festival. He didn't even run a novice. His best one, Brave Man's Game, got a soft lead and got beat a furlong. I mean, it is quite a bleak prospect for UK trainers.
I think you've touched on some really important points there, and Ed, I'll get you to give your view on that, and principally around programming, principally around prize money, and certainly around ratings. I mean, they're three foundation stones that the sport needs to get right. Clearly in the UK, it's not happening at the moment. What's your view? Can it be fixed?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think there's a danger of knee-jerk reactions, and B, there's a danger of just trying to pigeonhole it onto one particular thing, going, oh, that's what needs to be fixed. And I think Steve touched upon it. I think this year's Cheltenham was like the perfect storm, where everything that was, say, 10% below par here all kind of met, all kind of 7 or 8 facets all met at once and all got exposed on the 1 week, if you like. I think, the handicapping system is open to debate, the prize money, the lack of competitive racing here. Perhaps is there an argument that a lot of our horses are undercooked? They literally don't see a rival with 2 runs, and then suddenly they're going in against something which in theory is a stone better and just get totally blown out of the water. So I think there are so many different facets which have kind of equated to this one perfect storm where, frankly, the home team were embarrassed. And I mean, Matt Chapman made a good point. Not often would I ever go and say those words, to be honest with you, but he did make a good point. That all everyone keeps saying is, oh, the money's in Ireland, all the money's in Ireland. Well, Rich Ritchie didn't have a winner. JP McManus had 1 winner, and the Gigginstown House Stud had 1 winner. If you look on Company's House, their net worth is around 2 billion. So it's not the big multi-million pound Bucks owners which are winning. It's the middle tier Irish owners which are landing the pots. There's the smaller Irish trainers we saw landing the Coral Cup. So it's not just that, we'll throw money at it and that fixes it. There's clearly the infrastructure all the way through Irish racing is just steps ahead. Now, we haven't got time to go through and elaborate on every point, but Stephen pretty much nailed all the main ones I would touch upon. I think, there are issues where we're just substandard. I don't think we're as bad as we're making out, because I'm generally of the belief in life that lots of things are cyclical. Like 10 years ago, the Irish couldn't get a look in when there was Corto, Star, Denman, Masterminded, Big Bucks, blah, 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 blah. And again, look at this year. I think we had a really unusual year that Nicholls took a very few horses to the festival. Nicky Henderson, all his best young guns. Dusart was really hyped up. He got injured. His Triumph Hurdle Hope had a little setback. So I do think there were kind of mitigated circumstances where we didn't have our best team there. But the ones that were there, as Stephen says, were just shown up, really. So, I think it's probably a long debate for another day. But I think there are 7 or 8 different points where things are just not firing on all cylinders. And a lot of the Irish horses probably did have their best ever day, as well, it has to be said. And they arguably did slightly overperform. But it was this perfect concoction, and the floor got white with us. Law of averages to say perhaps next year will be a little bit closer, and maybe I've got my glass half full with the team GB Presby Cup hat on there. But there do seem to be problems. And what is interesting, a final point on this, is I keep hearing a lot of trainers and jockeys, likes of Dan Skelton, Harry Fry, Tom Scudamore this morning, all saying we need to pull our socks up. Well, okay, I kind of agree with that, but what does that actually mean? What does that mean? Are you just going to wake up tomorrow, it's all going to be fixed? I think there's people with much better brains than myself, and some of the regulatory bodies and some of the top trainers all need to be in some kind of big echo chamber, sit down and perhaps look at overall plans of where things could be sourced, because it's the other point is British owners are sending their horses to Ireland. That's the next point. Cheveley Park are British owners, really. They're based in Northampton, aren't they? Well, they used to be anyway. And it's so, there clearly is this view that the Irish are ahead of the game, and the results would suggest they are.
All right, let's hope whatever decision comes out of it, it's not knee-jerk, and they are getting the right people around the table to map out what could be a bit of a resurgence for the sport, because you can't just keep having a series of events which is all about the one event, and that is what the Cheltenham Festival is in the UK, where all the lead-up races are basically being avoided. I think there needs to be a significant amount of rethinking. One big positive to come out of Cheltenham, though, is Rachael Blackmore. Her emergence and her transformation from starting out 6 years ago, I think she was the very first young jockey to come through Ireland, where expectations were enormous as a female participant, but she's exceeded them, and her riding ability at Cheltenham was on full display. I think she's the number 1 seed when it comes to headline acts in jumps racing at the moment, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, that was the real good news story of the week, wasn't it? And the thing is with Rachael Blackmore is she is like Ruby Walsh, basically. Forget her gender, that's neither here nor there. She's absolutely brilliant over a fence, and she's extremely strong. And I'll tell you one thing about that, she didn't win the Gold Cup, but the way she kept Alboom Photo in, that is brilliant race riding on the home turn. She is thinking the whole time, and she's never in the wrong place, and she doesn't miss strides with horses. Jump racing, so much of it is won by that half a length over the hurdle or the fence out in the country. It's not really the last 10 yards when the whips come up and all the rest of it. It's out in the country with tactical judgment of pace, and she is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I think she's destined for the top job, and it would be great if one day she could be the sort of champion jockey in Ireland.
I think she is well on her way, and one of the things I'm finding fabulous to see unfold is the changing mindset of female riders in the game. I know in Australia, Jamie Carr's leading the Victorian Riders Premiership. She's the number one seed down there at the moment. It's been an evolution. We're seeing it with Holly Doyle on the flat in the UK, and now certainly with Rachael Blackmore and even Bryony Frost and her abilities in winning some of the big races. There's been a real significant shift, I think, in the past couple of years, and it's only going to do the sport a great deal of good long term.
Yeah, indeed, it widens its appeal, broadens its appeal, doesn't it? I think I agree with Stephen in the sense that whether she's male or female is neither here nor there. You're not going to kid her, if you know what I'm saying. The top trainers, the top owners, aren't going to book Rachael Blackmore onto their horses unless they think she's got the ability. And that is the bottom line here. And what clearly is the case is she is riding the absolute pants or knickers to be gender equal of every single person in the weighing room at the moment. I think her ride's absolutely fantastic at Cheltenham Festival. Another really good ride was Bob Ollinger, whereas a bit as they freewheel down the hill, she gets in all sorts of trouble. Now, she could have panicked, gone through the gap, or just quietly took the horse back, brought him wide, and then looked for a clear gap. And she just seems to ride this kind of calmness, like the old football manager would call it the environment factor, like Teddy Sheringham used to have. Anyone who goes back to those days, like he used to see the game three moves ahead. She just seems to have it all kind of mapped out. Like she does have that Ruby Walsh-esque kind of ability to just stay calm, and that's what I come down to. Her ability is just fantastic. From an armchair jockey perspective, she's quite unusual. In fact, she only turned pro at 25. You hear a lot of the game now. There's a lot of jockeys coming through at 16, 17. She's a relatively late bloomer now. She's into her 30s, but she's absolutely fantastic, and she's a tough cookie as well, isn't she? I mean, she fell off, but she had as many falls as she did wins at Cheltenham Festival, and yet she was at Turley's the next day riding a double or whatever. So, yeah, she's fantastic, and as I said, the fact that a lot of the big owners and trainers are booking her, it just tells you all you need to know about how good she is as a jockey.
Another sort of move that occurred during Cheltenham Festival this year was Henry de Bromhead, who's long been regarded as one of the top flight trainers in the game. But he's the first trainer to win the three big ones, the Champion Hurdle, the Champion Chase, and then, of course, the Gold Cup. He had a phenomenal week. Is this a bit of the changing the guard scenario, Stephen, from your perspective? I mean, is he now realistically going to rival, say, a Willie Mullins and a Gordon Elliott when he comes back, or whether it be Nicky Henderson or, as you said, Paul Nicholls?
Yeah, I think he's probably cemented his position, definitely third of the big three. I always had in my mind with Henry de Bromhead, he was a sort of cross-country specialist, but with this influx of horses, his training to get Manillo Indo to win the Gold Cup was absolutely brilliant, because this horse had not jumped at all fluently when disappointing back in Ireland on his previous start. And he actually said before the Gold Cup that you'd see a completely different performance today, and he was absolutely right. I mean, the horse jumped immaculately. I actually think that Gold Cup was probably one of the best for 10 years, really. Certainly since the days of Cater Star and Denman, they flew round on good ground, and you saw the English sort of pretenders like Native River and Royal Pagale absolutely lapped and unable to go the pace from quite an early stage. It was a really top-class performance.
Ed, I know you're a fan of Henry de Bromhead, but just the way he had his horses primed for the occasion, and then the tactics all mapped out the way that they wanted. It was a pretty amazing week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a brilliant week for the Bromhead team, and of course he's got his great record with his 2 milers, his 3 milers, his staying chasers, and I'm reading this morning Cheveley Park Stud. They've splashed out the cash, those famous red and white silks now in the jumps game. They've sent another really promising pointer to I think 2 have gone to Mullins, and the third one has gone to Henry de Bromhead. They say that's it for the season. They're not really looking to expand beyond that, but of course there's a lot of faith from these big owners with Henry de Bromhead at the moment, and yeah, he just seems to be able to do the lot, doesn't he? Champion hurdle winners, Gold Cup winners. First, I mean, Special Tiara, she was fantastic. Got her back at Cheltenham. She's now 4 from 4 at the track, isn't she? So, yeah, I mean, whether he's got the volume of numbers in order to, the thing with Gordon Elliott with his 900 horses or your Mullins, whatever, he can run 4 also-rans on a Thursday and notch up a 4-timer, if you see what I'm saying. I'm not sure Bromhead's quite got the volume of horses, perhaps, to compete in that sense. But in terms of the quality, you wouldn't want to look much further than Henry de Bromhead in terms of getting a really good horse at the moment.
Guys, I've got a question for both of you around the Cheltenham Festival this year. A lot of horses go into this meeting with enhanced reputations. They're considered the next big thing, and some will rise to the occasion. Others will go out the back door and perhaps never measure up again. Which horses do you think have come out with a better reputation or have gone away perhaps with a dented reputation, Stephen?
Well, I think the main negative for me was Epatante in the champion hurdler. I still thought that she could be a top-class hurdler. And I thought her form was better than Honeysuckle on the lead up to the race, but she was extremely easy to back, Shane. We talked about this before the race, that, if she was sort of 9-4 popping on, it was a big advert for a chance. And if she was 6-1, then it really wasn't. Well, lo and behold, she was 11-2, extremely weak, never landed a blow. And I didn't like the way she faded up the hill when she did get asked a question, albeit when the race was all but over. So she's going to go to Aintree now, I believe, or maybe Punchestown actually, to take Honeysuckle on again, which could be a very fruitless mission. She's got loads to prove. I thought Royal Pagali was really disappointing in the Gold Cup. That looked the wrong race. I know they were brave to have a try, but that one needs softer ground and a flat track. Obviously, Champ and Santini were bitterly disappointing. The one horse I think maybe to take from the festival is Fast Flow, who ran in the Champion Chase, which was probably a substandard renewal with the way Chacun Pour Soi faded. But Fast Flow had been ridden so aggressively at Ascot. I was amazed they didn't try to lead, or maybe he couldn't go the pace. He propped right at the fences. He needs a right-hand track. They're going to go to Punchestown, hopefully. And if they gun him from the he could be a real spectacle and hard to beat over there.
All right, so good one to keep an eye on for the future. What about you, Ed? Which ones came out on top and which ones have you sort of now put a line through, perhaps never to back again after Cheltenham?
Yeah, to put the kind of the negative ones first, I mean, Champ was incredibly disappointing. I mean, I didn't back him at all, but hindsight would show that his defeat of Allaho and Manila Indo is looking like one of the best renewals of what was the RSA chase in history, wasn't it? Yeah, he belted the first, never jumped to twig, and I believe he's gone back to Ireland for a bone scan, and he's more or less out for the season with problems with his back. Wouldn't at all surprise me if he came back in the Stayers hurdle next year. That kind of angle with him, he does not jump well enough at pace. And the biggest disappointment, speaking of my pocket, was Tritonic, who ran no sort of race at all. Now, there is every conceivable possibility that he was just out of his depth. Part of me still thinks we perhaps didn't quite see him at his kind of full potential on that day. But what kind of, I love a good excuse after from a connection, in terms of, like Champ had a very valid excuse. I mean, he absolutely whacked the first fence and he was pretty much gone from there on it. With Tritonic, it seems very kind of semi-philosophical, like, oh, well, it wasn't his day and it didn't quite go right for him. And what does that mean? I mean, either the ground was wrong, he's not good enough, or he's given a bad rider. There's got to be something. And maybe his connection's a little bit just trying to save face. And suddenly there's the kind of embarrassment like, crikey, we were out of our depth here. So they're talking about perhaps going back on the flat and aiming at Royal Ascot. They haven't decided yet. So I thought Tritonic was just totally underwhelming. For the nice things to look forward to, Caribbean Boy is a huge eye catcher going forward. If you can remember rightly, Shane and Stephen, the Plate was the race where it was an absolute shambles at the beginning. They had about 73 retakes to get them off. Caribbean Boy is a front runner. You could even hear Daryl Jacob arguing with Robbie Supple to start a lot. What do you want me to do? He asked them to take another turn, and as they do, Caribbean Boy gets stuck in the backwash and has to come from the back in the standing start. He made eye-catching late headway up to about 7th of 20 in a race that was just totally wrong for him. Keep your eyes on him. If they can find a race where he can just get out in front and dominate, I maintain he's well handicapped. And my biggest eye-catchers also have actually tipped and backed for next year's Gold Cup was from that brilliant race with Allaho. It was Mr. Fisher for the Ryanair. Now, I know a lot of people are probably spitting their coffee out and laughing at me on the basis of that, saying I think he's got a chance of winning the Gold Cup. He's 66-1. Now, I've watched this race back half a dozen times now. He's the only horse who goes to close with Allaho and Min coming to 3 out. Mr. Fisher leaves his legs in the water jump, Zerchop style. He could have fallen on that occasion coming down the back, yet he keeps going. He closes the gap even more, makes a fiddly error at the next. He then still manages to close. Coming down to 3 out, he's come back on the bridle. He's closed the gap to Allaho to just over 2 lengths. Every other horse, all these good horses, your Mellins, your Sam Crows, your Purelaws, are all out with the washing, totally spent. He closes to 2 lengths, bang, he belts the third last, he's out of the race. I essentially think you're getting 66-1 on the fact he didn't jump that one fence. If he jumps that, he's a length behind Allaho and he's upsides coming into the home straight and he's still going well. I know he may be a little bit pie in the sky, but Nico de Boinville's interview after was very revealing, saying he had the horse at top revs the whole way around to go with him. He must go up in trip now. They were just going a stride too quick for him. So it sounds like they might be rolling the dice for the Aintree Bowl, where we have a crack at our Plutard, and I think 3 miles would definitely suit. He's only 7. He's entitled to prove of age as well, with lots of stamina in his pedigree. So, yeah, in order to answer your question, Champion Tritonic, very disappointing. Caribbean Boy, your eye catcher for a handicap. And I do think Mr. Fisher over 3 miles, he's got unfinished business.
I love it. We've just finished Cheltenham Festival for this year, and we're already looking ahead to next year with a long price opportunity. Can't wait. Yeah. Well, we're only 2 weeks away now from the Grand National. And, of course, the Grand National is arguably the biggest betting race there is in the UK. Stephen, 2 weeks out, what are we doing from a betting perspective? Have you finalised which way we should be going?
Well, at the risk of sounding like after-time Ansel from Twitter, I have actually backed Cloth Cap at 14 and 16. And I did actually say a few months ago about it, so it's not too bad. Yeah. It's on camera, hopefully. Yeah. I think he'll probably do a Mr. Frisk, to be honest, Shane. Those of us like yourself and me who can remember back to the 90s will remember Mr. Frisk winning the Grand National. And he made it was run on a cricket pitch that was brown. I mean, it's firm ground. It would never be allowed now. It would be completely illegal for them to have that sort of ground. But Mr. Frisk went off at like 5 furlong pace and somehow won. And they just flew round Aintree. They had proper fences in those days as well. I think Cloth Cap might do similar. He's a bold front runner. He does jump a bit left at his fences, but that shouldn't really be any issue. I suspect he's going to be a vice favourite. Now, if you haven't had a bet, I do think he's far too short. He's 5-1. I mean, I think he was 6-1 the other day. That's now in the sponge. He's now a 9-2 chance, I believe. So he's short enough. Everyone knows everything about him. He was really impressive at Kelso. The other one on my shortlist at the moment, assuming we're going to get pretty good ground at Aintree, I thought any second now of Ted Walsh, who's a 9-year-old. He was really impressive over 2 miles at Navan in March. Didn't come off the bridle to win a Grade 2 there. Now, people used to say you want a sort of 2-miler to win the Grand National, believe it or not. Though, again, I'm showing my age, and that's probably a load of nonsense now. But has got a touch of class, got a lenient handicap mark. He's only ever tried a marathon trip once, and he fell over 3 mile 5 before halfway. But he has hinted that this sort of trip should suit him. I can see him running well. He's a double-figure price. He'd be an alternative. But I must admit I will be cheering on Cloth Cap.
All right, good push there for Cloth Cap once again from Stephen. You have been sticking with him all the way through, so we'll stick solid with you. What about you, Ed?
Well, if you're on at nice prices like Stephen, then yes, but I think he's becoming daft price territory now. I mean, the 92's about to go. He's touching 7-2 with 4 firms. What I think the problem is I would not go near him now. What people seem to be forgetting is the ground. Now, this is the key factor. John Joe O'Neill said, gone on record saying he's one of the most ground-dependent horses he's got in his yard. His record would suggest that he's got 5 career wins. 3 of those come on ground officially described as good. The other 2 are on good to soft. One of those good in places. He needs quick ground. If it rains, like it did just before Cheltenham, all day on Thursday and Friday, I think he's a massive false favourite. Yes, I accept he's a stone well in and everything, but I don't think he'll go a yard if we ended up with a softer, heavy Grand National. If it was any other race, they'd pull him out, if that makes sense. I just, look, if you're on already, yes, I'd be more tempted, if you really do like him, to wait for the day, find out the sun's out, it's 16 degrees, the ground's good, and back him at 11-4, knowing you've got everything right. It's not for me at the price. I mean, a couple of bigger prices, I would... I'll probably throw in a couple of lunatics. I do think Bristol De Mai will be tuned for this. He's got a big weight, but he's a class horse and he's a very good jumper, and he's around 33-1. And now the absolute lovable rogue in here at 50s. If Santini ran in this, I would throw a few pounds on him at 66-1, purely because he gets called a lot of names, but he is a good stayer, and by and large, he's a pretty good jumper. Apart from the one mistake he made at Cheltenham last time out, he did not take to the visor at all. Horse has got a bit sour. As I said, he does stay and he does jump. And if you knew he was going to run, I think around 66-1, he would be a lively each way play. But sounds like Nicky Henderson weighing up whether to go over to take his brigade to Punchestown and have a crack at Manila Indo again, but which I think would be a waste of time personally. But personally, I'm quite like to get stuck into things, but I'm powders dry for now, Shane. Gonna give it another week or so.
All right, we'll talk more about the Grand National again on next week's show. We've still got good racing this weekend. Let's have a look at a couple of key chances. Well, guys, I've got a spring in my step because the flat racing season is back well and truly. And, of course, we've got the big Lincoln meeting coming up this weekend. But we've still got plenty of jumps action to focus on. And there's a good race coming up on Saturday at Newbury, Stephen, which is a Grade 2 for the mares, the Bet Victor National Hunt Mares Novices Hurdle. And you found one at a good price for us here.
Yeah, I quite like Honeymoon of Fergal O'Brien. Now, she's a 7-year-old mare who is extremely expensive to follow in her first few starts over hurdles, but she was a hard puller who didn't jump particularly fluently, and that seems to have improved for some better ground this spring. She was really impressive at Wetherby, albeit against a weak lot, in command a mile out there, tanking round on decent ground. She now goes into a handicap, which I think will suit her. I think she'll settle for the first time. She's a double figure price. Paddy Brennan's booked. I think she'll go really close if the ground stays good at Newbury on Saturday.
All right, good each-way option there from Stephen. Ed, you're going for another race on the card, and that is the Bet Victor Handicap Chase at Class 2 level. Smallish field coming together here. Who do you like?
Well, this was a race, a horse I flagged up last time out as a bit of an eye catch on the show a few weeks back. It's Grand Sancy for Paul Nicholls. It ran over course of distance in the Greatwood Gold Cup, I think it's called, going back just before the Cheltenham Festival. Was making eye-catching, absolutely belted the fence. Ryan Frost on board that day, lost all confidence after that, made another scratchy error, was ultimately beaten into ninth. I think this much smaller field will suit. This is a horse who's got a very good record in small fields. I think looked a little bit spooked when surrounded by a huge number of runners last time out. Ground will be actually perfect, and the handicapper has been very kind and eased him £2 on the back of that. Ground should be perfect. Harry Cobden on board. I think, yeah, you're right, Shane. Only the 6 runners due to go to post. I think everything is set up perfectly here for Grand Sancy to dominate this small field and get back to winning ways for the Paul Nicholls team.
Great work, guys. Good luck this weekend. Good to catch up once again, and we'll see you next week here on Jump To It. Well, of course, make sure you head to irishracing.com, get all the latest news, form, tips, cards and betting information. Vincent and the team do a fantastic job. And, of course, bettingexpert.com, Stephen Harris's tips available for each and every day for the UK racing. And as we've said numerous times here on Jump To It, Stephen's been in very good form over the past few months, and hopefully it'll continue as we head towards the Grand National. Hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of Jump To It. We'll see you next week.